Hello, everyone. This is Manolo Concepcion. I am the new associate head coach at Eastern Illinois University here in the United States of America. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please share this conversation on your own feeds and the groups that you think that might benefit from this learning opportunity. I can tell you that I began with this project around 2.5 months ago with the purpose of gaining more knowledge, not just of the game, but more of how to learn and why through our backgrounds and experiences from different volleyball communities around the world. I'm glad to say that we have had many people from many different backgrounds, from many different experiences that have joined our program so far, and it has been really enriching. And hopefully, you feel the same way as well. Please know that feel free to comment and provide feedback throughout this conversation because today I think that you're going to be really excited. It's a perfect way to start a week. Having the type of guest that we have today on a Monday that we all feel like, the beginning of a week, such a great motivator, such a good positive energy, and most of all, so much knowledge as a master learner and a great teacher of learning as well. Please welcome Mr. Trevor Ragan. How are you, Trevor?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Good. Tell me a little bit about how are you spending this pandemic right now, and and first of all, if your family is safe and healthy.
Everyone is safe and healthy so far, and I think I've been doing what most people are doing, just trying to figure it out. It's been a roller coaster. Like when it first started, and probably a lot of people listening would feel the same. I was like, yes, I'm going to dig in and write a book and make a new workshop, and I'm going to do all of these things. And then the adrenaline kind of ran out, and then I swung the other way where I was having trouble working on anything at all because I was just feeling so sad and confused. And so it's been kind of going back between those two poles. But now I'm kind of finding the middle of like, look, this is weird. I don't know what I'm doing. No one knows what they're doing. And I'm finding ways to work on stuff that I think is important and learn stuff that I think is important and share it as much as we can. So kind of getting back to the roots of why I do what I do and finding different ways to do that. So I bet everyone listening has experienced all three of those buckets as well. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Trevor, you have created this great concept of basically establishing a movement about learning. And you have been in touch, with many companies. You have been able to impact so many different groups outside of volleyball, beyond just a sport. And we're going to touch base on each of those aspects. But, I want to ask you, like, what now? What are you planning to do in order to evolve with your projects in that regard?
Yep. I think so. Only when we look back do things make sense. I think from the outside, maybe some people are like, oh, I had this planned all along and I know what I'm doing. I absolutely do not. It's like I've been just stumbling around, and I was lucky by being in the right time and place and meeting the right people to where I could see like, oh, that topic right there matters a lot. And then I had the freedom to dig into it. So the way I see it now is it's been about 6 or 7 years, but we're really good at nailing down like the mental side of how we think about learning. And I think there's some pillars of that. One is just maybe recalibrating how we think of the learning process, that we have to know that it involves sustained action that takes place out of our comfort zone. It has to involve struggle. We have to be clear on that. We have to be clear on the fact that we can grow, that if it's a skill, we can all get better at it. And that seems simple, but to me, that's like a great fuel source that can drive learning, that growth mindset. I can grow. And then the third pillar that we've been really working on a lot lately is, look, if you're going to get out of your comfort zone, it's going to feel weird. It's called a comfort zone for a reason. So we're going to create discomfort as we expand out of our comfort zone. But if we're not aware of how to deal with discomfort, and if we're not willing to feel uncomfortable, then we're probably not going to be that great of learners. And so that third pillar we've been really trying to boost lately, which is how do you understand those tough emotions like fear, anxiety, stress, and find ways to work with those rather than trying to like push them away, which usually doesn't work. And so
I
the way
have a question because
yeah,
like it reminds me of a movie that I really like a lot. That people say about Will Smith that he's really good at what he does because no one understands what his job is. Like,
yeah.
so what is your job? Like, what do you do?
Okay. So that whole description was just saying, to me, what we're creating and trying to figure out is what is the framework for better learning? What is that? And so I see my job as three things. First, learn. Learn from people way smarter than me, the scientists, the people doing the research, great coaches, great teachers, anybody who's digging into how to become a better learner. I'm going to go find them and learn from them. The second bucket, share it so people can use it. Like, so
Yes.
I'm kind of like a translator of, I'm not going to dumb it down, but I want to use a language to where like a second grade student could understand it and use it. And so we've really focused on how we explain the stuff. And then the third bucket is where I get to travel and do workshops and teach this stuff to different groups all over the world. So my job is figure out how to become a better learner and then find ways to share that. That's my job description. So
and I have seen in throughout this time, with Volley Junkies, how some of the best coaches in the world and the best coaches that have come to this platform are not just great people, they're great learners. They love sharing. The more they know, the more they want others to know as well.
Yeah.
Why, Trevor? What's the...
Well, I think there's a lot there, and that's a lesson I learned early on. That might have been one of the most important lessons I learned when I started my mission 7 or 8 years ago, which is people were asking me like, how are you getting in contact with all these great people? It's like, I emailed them. That's it. There's no magic. And what I found over and over is almost like the higher level the person was, whether in the sports or research world, the more of an open door they had, the more hungry they were to bring me in and learn from me and talk with me. And that starts with like Karj Karai, Tom Black. He was on here just like a few days ago. Like, those are the guys where I reached out to them and they invited me out. And when I was out there, not only was I like taking book notes, they're asking me questions. They're hungry to grow. And that's one pattern I have recognized in and out of sports. It's like sometimes the very, very best are the most hungry to grow. And that inspires me a lot. It's like, and I think the way I think about it, and I believe this to be true, is it's not like they become successful and then they're generous with their time and hungry to grow. It's no, they are very successful because they're generous with their time and they're hungry to grow. It's like that's a feature that they have. That's one reason that they've made it there. And there's many more, but that's a pattern I've definitely recognized. And I think you've seen the same.
I have given this example throughout the conversations that I have had here, but people like Daniel Castellani tells me how he has this group of coaches, and at first he tells me, yeah, some of the coaches that that are okay, are good around the world, we are in the same group, and then he started mentioning that Antigua is on that group, Guidetti is on that group, Bernardinho is on that group, like just people like that, and they're all like just sharing information about where they at with their own programs, what they know, and how they can continue to get better. And speaking of Castellani, I was watching a presentation he was giving the other day, and he had already worked on improving the presentation he gave in my program in terms of like he's already learning how to improve himself consistently. And that happened also when I have Karch, in this conversation, how he was explaining that his gym is all about that. And he said it actually in a program that he did with you, by the way. And I invite everyone to visit Trevor Ragan's channel on YouTube. It's called the Learner Lab. He has great content out there. And one of the videos that you show Karch Kirao with his staff, Jamie Morrison, Tom Black, and other people talking about that environment. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, that was a turning point for me. So I knew early on that the US women's volleyball gym, like for the stuff that I was researching, I knew they were implementing it. And the funny thing is, like Tom Black read one of my blogs. I have no idea how he found it because at the time I was not a big deal. No one was reading my stuff except for my mom. But somehow Tom Black found it, which again shows how hungry he is to grow.
Mhm.
And he emailed, he said, "Hey, you should come out and hang out and watch us practice. It'd be great to get you out here." And so my brother and I went out there and for like a week just observed, and I was just like, oh. But the amazing thing is when I went out there, my thinking was, I'm going to learn about all these drills that they do and ways to structure a better practice. And for sure, I observed that. But the thing that changed the course of my whole company and what I do is, bigger picture, I saw how they created the bigger learning environment. It's not just about the drills. The drills are great, but there was something bigger going on. It was the hunger to grow. Every single person in the gym was hungry to get better. The coaches were walking the walk and modeling this behavior. And so the funny thing is, when I interviewed them, the plan was, oh, I want them to break down how they build a practice. But that conversation, and it ended up being a couple hours long, was all about how they're continuing to grow, how they're being learners, how they're modeling those behaviors. And it was like one of those curveball moments. You think you're getting this, but what you get is much more powerful and like something that's helped me a ton, which is that's one of the building blocks of creating a better learning environment is being hungry to grow yourself and modeling those behaviors for your people. And that goes for any classroom, that goes for any sports team, any company. Like I know that to be true. And those guys are the ones that kind of showed me that and shined a light on that.
How does modeling works? Like, and is it something that, as you say, it happens in any environment, but
Yeah.
you know what's the importance of it, including in our game? Why
Yeah.
do I need to be thinking about modeling if I already
Okay.
know how to teach the game?
Yeah. So this is good. So we just did a podcast episode on modeling, and I learned a ton. We had Karch on the episode and CC Clark. She was one of the mental training coaches for the Cleveland Indians. So I learned a lot from them. So everything you do is modeling. So if I'm a leader and there's people around me, every action, everything I say is being modeled. So the idea is understand how powerful modeling is and focus on modeling better stuff more often. And so the misconception I had going in before I made the episode was, oh, I thought modeling is if I'm a volleyball coach, I demonstrate how to do a skill, or
Like a demo.
Yeah, I model how brave I am or how awesome I am.
Yeah.
But what we found from the research and the interviews we did, that the best modeling are sort of these foundational things. Like, of course, we can demonstrate for our players, and that's great. But to really improve the learning culture, what you want to model is the hunger to grow, the willingness to struggle, the willingness to try new things, asking for feedback. Even a type of modeling, and Karch is great at this, of owning our mistakes. It's like, hey, I was trying this out, it didn't work, and I'm owning that. And so what you find, and this like kind of big aha moment for me, is research across the board for decades shows that psychological safety is like the most important feature of any group. That goes for healthcare workers, school, sports, companies. That's the key. What we want is to feel safe to be ourselves, to struggle, to try new stuff.
It's safe to be vulnerable.
Yes, to just be ourselves and engage in learning behaviors. Modeling is a really, really good way to build that. And so if you think about it, so let's say you're a coach of a team and you're constantly asking your players for feedback. Like, hey, what did you think about this practice? I tried this new drill. What did you think about that? Or, hey, what could be better about this? What could be better about that? Think of the power of that. Step one, you're going to get useful feedback. But step two, what you're doing is you're building a safer environment for the players to ask you for feedback. Because if you're constantly hungry and asking, it's now safer for them to do the same. And so my advice for anyone in a leadership role is, well, what are the actions and behaviors that I would like to see more of? how do I put those actions and behaviors on display? Because as I'm doing that, I'm creating safety. A good story about it. We had this project called the Anti-Talent Show. And so the challenge was you have to pick something you can't do. You have 2 weeks to practice it, and then you have the anti-talent and you show what you learned. And there was a middle school. So the students are like 12 or 13-year-old students, a middle school in Kansas City, Missouri. And all of the students and the teachers did the anti-talent show together. So they all picked something that they couldn't do, practiced for 2 weeks, and then held the anti-talent show. I actually got to visit the school when they were done. And I'm hanging out with the students. And I was asking them, like, well, what did you like about this? And all of them are like, I learned to juggle. I learned to skateboard. All of these cool skills. But then this girl raises her hand, 7th grade girl. She says, the best part of the anti-talent show for me is that I got to see my teacher struggle, and that helped me understand it's okay for me to struggle too.
I love it. I love it. Mistakes, everyone in the same boat, everyone being able to be vulnerable and throw themselves out.
And that tells us everything we need to know about modeling. The teacher was learning to juggle. The student was learning to paint. The teacher wasn't modeling how to paint. The teacher was modeling how to grow, how to be willing to struggle and experiment and make mistakes. And it was that changed the environment. So it was brilliant that the teacher was doing that, but I don't think sometimes we understand how powerful of a signal that is to send to our people. Now, it's not always comfortable to model stuff like that, but it's so powerful for the members of the group to pick up on that signal. It's okay to struggle because I see someone doing it. So important.
And you have mentioned in the past the following, like that you feel that action, belief, and growth are 3 terms that are very related towards this learning process. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I like we've sort of created like a cycle that shows how these 3 things play together. And the way I think about it would be if you zoomed out and looked at it from a distance, that's the learning process simplified. It's belief, action, growth. And the reason this matters is it shows how important our beliefs are to the learning process. I think everyone listening could agree on one thing. Maybe we disagree on a lot of things, but we can agree on one thing. Action is the key to growth, period. Like, you can't grow without action. Okay? So if we can agree on that, good job us. Then the next layer that we need to show is our beliefs impact our action. Okay, so let's break that down. If I believe I could grow, this is what's called a growth mindset. I believe I could grow. I am more likely to take action. That makes sense. Like if I believe I could get in better shape, I'm more likely to work out. Great.
Oh, true. Yeah. I mean, it has to be part of what I have in my mind. I have to frame that in my mind that I want that to happen.
At the heart of any change is the belief that change is possible. That's what a growth mindset is. I believe I can grow.
To scroll down because I have to put in notes all these quotes that you're giving, one after one.
Okay, so the heart of any change is the belief I could grow. It's the belief that fuels the action. Now, learning isn't as simple as I believe now I can grow. It's like, nope, that's why action's there. I believe, which means I will take and sustain action, which means I'm more likely to grow. Good. Belief fueling action. But then you flip it to what they call a fixed mindset, which is I can't grow. I cannot learn math. I cannot learn to jump float. I cannot learn to do this. Name the skill, it works the same. If I don't believe I could get in better shape, I'm probably not going to work out. And if I don't work out, of course, I don't get in better shape. So what we're saying is action is the key, but our beliefs could either fuel that action or they could chop that action off. And then you take that to the next step of growth. If I'm taking and sustaining action, I'm more likely to grow. If I'm not, I'm probably not going to grow. And then you take it back to the core. In order to become a better learner, step 1, and there's more steps, but step 1 is we need to kind of build that belief that we can grow. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I really believe that the misstep when we talk about growth mindset is we tell people to have one. So if we were doing this,
have a growth mindset.
yeah, if we were doing this 2 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, see, growth mindset matters. Next question. But where I want to just spend a couple of minutes is, if we're saying that in order to grow, we need to believe, we need to be clear on a few things. First, our beliefs can change a lot. Like, just because I have a strong growth mindset doesn't mean I'm going to have one every second of every day of my life. It can change a lot. The other thing we have to be aware of is, I think, 3 good ways to build it. Step 1 would be just reflecting. It's like, hey, do you want some proof that you can grow? Look backwards. Everyone listening, every single person on this call, and everyone who's going to watch this is really good at a lot of things. And for the most part, we weren't just given those skills. We weren't just born with those skills. Everyone earned those. We built them through practice and struggle and experimentation. We're all getting better every week, every month, every year, but sometimes we don't recognize that growth. And when we look back and just give ourselves some credit, some deserved credit for all the learning that we're doing, that's a good way to like reinforce this belief. I believe I could grow because I have grown. Yeah, go ahead.
We're talking to Trevor Ragan, the creator of the Learner Lab. Like I said, I invite everyone, first of all, to like his Facebook page. Again, he has great content, great podcasts. It's all about learning. It's all about getting, yourself into that vulnerability in order to grow. Also visit his YouTube channel, which again has amazing content. And he also has a podcast that he's going to tell us about more later.
Sure.
But again, we're talking to him today, and we are addressing the concept of believing in learning. I have a question, Trevor. What's more important, the message or the messenger in the concept of learning?
The message. It's the message. And there's a lot of ways to connect this message. When I was younger, I was more like trying to be motivational and yelling and screaming and hyping people up. And sometimes that connects with people, but I've found that I've changed my messaging entirely. It's like slower now. There's more empathy, and we're talking about the same stuff. But I think if the principles and the core are coming from a good place and there's empathy, there's a lot of strategies to teaching stuff like this. I think my approach is always going to be using examples that are relatable, easy to understand language, and then I'm going to add the science on top of it. So I'm trying to hit these boxes of, I want to tell a good story, I want to give a good example, and then I'm going to give you some science. And when you create that concoction, I think people relate to it. But I've seen other people do it other ways. But the core of our message is you could grow. Now, right now, I'm trying to make that point through logic of you can grow because you have grown. Another way would be more of the science approach, which would be, let's talk about neuroplasticity and the research around how our brains are constantly changing when we're growing. That could be a good way to get someone to believe that they could grow. So there's not a blueprint, but the goal we're after is building that belief for this pillar of learning.
When did you become a good learner? Like, what was that point? What did it for you? Was it that research about neuroplasticity, or was it just getting hit in the face with reality of life? Like, what did it for you?
It was getting hit in the face with the reality of life. And probably that's, for most anyone listening, that's how real change starts.
Same here. Absolutely.
So I think there were 2 foundational things. One was a win, one was a loss. That I didn't know it at the time, but it was instilling some of these lessons. The loss was, my whole life I wanted to play basketball at Duke University. Since I was like 10 years old, that was my goal.
Wow.
And I practiced all the time, like so much. And I got pretty good at basketball. I was from a really small town in the middle of Wyoming. I could get out to Duke. I was accepted into the school. I tried out for the team. Like 100 people tried out.
Wow.
I made the Final Four. So the 4 of us were on the team for like a month of the preseason, working out with the team, practicing with the team. It was the coolest month of my life. Like I was crying every day that I went to work out because I was so happy.
Wow. And how's Coach K? You know,
He's amazing. Like sometimes people are like, "Oh, don't meet your heroes because you'll be disappointed." He's the opposite of that. It's like, "Yep, go meet him." It was amazing, and just to be around that environment, I was in heaven. So at the end of the preseason, they had to cut 2, keep 2, and I was the last person cut.
wow.
And
Yeah.
this is not an inspirational story like the Michael Jordan story where it's like, and then I took
came
the
back.
year and came back. And nope, it's the opposite. It's like I went into a huge tailspin. I was depressed. I was angry. I was sad. Like I felt lost. I didn't know what to do. It was devastating for me because basketball was my life at that point. I got to be a practice player and manager for the team and go to the games and observe practice. And sometimes I get in, which sounds cool on paper, but the whole time I was angry. And so I don't even think I got as much out of that experience as I could have. I was just so angry. But now this is a long time ago. And I can look back now and without a doubt say that was a foundational experience that got me on this path because it planted this seed of like, wow, I thought I did everything that I could do to make this team. What could I have done better? And it is that what could I have done better question is what's fueled my entire mission with this. How can we become better learners? And so it was that big failure that is sort of fueling my journey. When I look back, I can connect those dots for sure.
Did you feel that you gave everything you got to that journey, and then that's why it led you to better things after that?
I for the tools and knowledge I had, I did as much as I could. If I could go do it again with the tools and knowledge I have now, I would have made the team. I have no doubt. Just being smarter about how I approach learning, smarter about how you train and practice, I would have been a lot better. I would have made the team. And that's good. That shows that I'm growing and getting better. We should always be able to look backwards at like 3 years ago and just be like, oh man, like that's a good sign. That means we're growing. And so for sure, I've learned, I know I have the tools and knowledge now that I would have been, maybe no guarantees, but I would have been much better. And if I would have been much better, I'd probably make that team.
Trevor, I had an eye accident, maybe in 2002, playing volleyball, and that changed the path that I thought that I was going to have as an athlete. And I wasn't the perfect athlete in Puerto Rico or anything like that, not even close, but I was a really hard worker, and I was all about that being my only path. So, that change took a lot from me because I did not know how to manage it at that point. Like, it was like I was defining my reality based on who I was as a player. Yeah. So that's when I found more than learning aspects of life. I was more of like that's what I found out what change was all about and the importance and role of change that it has towards growth. Can you talk a little bit about that, about dealing with adversity and dealing with change?
It's really hard. It's like, look, one thing we're all learning right now, and we know this, but it's kind of just being like driven home. It's like change is going to happen. And everyone listening, we're faced with challenges. There's no blueprint to dealing with the challenge, but there are some tools that we can talk about and some helpful tools. I'm not an expert in this. I've been researching these tools. Doesn't mean they're easy to use, and I fail with them all the time. But there are some useful tools. And so when we're thinking about dealing with change or dealing with a big challenge, I think one is to understand the place of growth mindset. It's super useful here, that this belief of this is terrible, this is scary, this is hard, but I'm not stuck exactly here. Maybe I'm physically stuck here, but there's place for me to grow somewhere in here. The growth might be messy, it might be hard, it might be slow, but it's possible. And so like starting there is important. And then I think you get into the stuff we were talking about earlier is just like the willingness to feel. I think so many times we're trained to believe that it's not good to feel bad, that we talk about some emotions as good and others as bad. That's not true. Some are more fun to feel than others, but there are no good and bad emotions. Like, we're trained and people are signaling these things that feeling fear is bad or it's not good to be nervous. But then if you get into the research, you see that approach causes tons of problems. And so one of the most important and underrated skills of resilience and dealing with challenges is just the willingness to accept our feelings, the willingness to feel these tough emotions. Because what happens when we think they're bad and then we feel them, we start to have feelings about our feelings. And that's where we get into trouble. So
wait. Feelings about our feelings.
Yeah. Let's get into this.
For everyone watching out there, are we talking about framing here?
We're getting there. We're talking about feeling. So, but this leads to framing. Feelings about our feelings are this. When we have this narrative that it's bad to feel bad, and then we're in a challenge, or it's before a big match, or during a timeout, and it's the fifth set, and we feel nervous, our narrative is, it's not good to feel like this. And what happens is those type 2 emotions, the feelings about feelings, it's, I'm anxious for being anxious. I feel shame because I'm afraid. And that's the snowball of like, I shouldn't be feeling like this, but I do. Something's wrong. I'm not ready. I'm not prepared. And all of that really, really snowballs. And it's all coming from this idea of that we shouldn't feel. And so now the question becomes, well, what do you do with that? There is a survey they did from Harvard Business School where they asked people that question. When you're feeling activated before a big moment, you're feeling nervous and some stress and some anxiety, what is the best approach? 91% of people on the survey said you should tell yourself or someone else to calm down or don't be afraid. 91% of people. And I bet most of the people listening would say the same thing. That's what we hear. That's what we say. We think feeling bad is bad, so we should get rid of it.
I have a feeling right now about the feelings that you're explaining that it's actually conflicted with my feelings.
This is a tough one to accept, but I'm bringing you the science now. So it's not just Trevor talking. There's some cool research. So, okay, 91% of us think we should tell ourselves, don't be afraid. The research around these tough emotions shows that is exactly the opposite approach of what we should do. So what they do to study this, it's very simple. They'll put people into high stress situations and they'll try and attempt these different approaches of suppressing versus accepting versus the control group. So one study can teach us the lesson. The stressful situation was you have to go into a room and sing Don't Stop Believing to 3 people you don't know. And the 3 people you don't know are part of the study, and they're trained to give you no facial feedback. So the entire time you're singing, they sit there like this.
Oh, that's the worst.
If you were doing that right now, I'd be like, oh, my Wi-Fi died. I'm out. I would just leave. Like, sorry. Like, that's stressful to get nothing from someone that you're performing in front of. Okay, so
you were talking about how that's also shaping your work right now because you're doing your work through Zoom and looking for that feedback. So that's exactly what you're talking about here.
Yeah, humans, we need that body language. We need to pick up on that, which is why it's uncomfortable to present on Zoom. Much easier in a room. So one group, before they have to sing the song, is told, calm down. Don't be afraid. So they're kind of framing these feelings as a negative thing. The other group is taught to accept, and the research is called reappraise. So they're told, hey, it's normal, it's okay, it's expected, it's good to feel these. This means you're a human. Okay, so the first group scores a 53% on they sing the song, it scores them. The second group scores an 81%. That's a 30% boost in performance coming from just 10 seconds to help them change the way they think about their feelings. Now, this is the key part, and then I'll shut up. In research like this, they measure blood pressure, heart rate, hormones. It was the same for all the groups. All the students' heart rates went up, their blood pressure went up, their hormones changed, the physiology changed. So when we're talking about changing the way we think about feeling, we are not necessarily changing how we feel, but we're changing the way we interpret that. And that's the key. So group one, who's told don't feel, when they're in the situation and they're feeling, they assume they're failing. Something's wrong. You told me not to feel, but I am. Their attention goes to the feeling of trying to fight this battle that you can't really win. Why am I afraid? I shouldn't be afraid. That must mean I'm not good, or whatever it may be. But then you put yourself into the shoes of the other group who's taught it's okay to feel. It's expected. It's human. They're in the room feeling the same feelings, but they're more likely to accept them and turn their attention to singing the song, which is why they sing better. And so we can use that simple study, and that can inform a lot of our action. That when we try to push back on fear, stress, anxiety, and these tough emotions, number one, that's not effective, but it usually gets worse and can actually have a negative impact on our performance. When we learn to accept them, and I'm not saying it's fun to feel them, but just to accept them, what happens is when we accept, we can just kind of turn our attention to the task at hand, and we're getting out of those type 2 emotions. Once I accept that it's okay to feel, then I'm less likely to shame myself for being afraid or shame myself for being nervous. So I still get nervous before every workshop, but I'm less likely to shame myself for being nervous, when in the past, that's exactly what I would do. I'm nervous. That means I'm not prepared. I'm too young. I'm not smart enough. And everyone listening has been there. And so the key with this topic that we're touching on is just accept the fact that it's okay to feel. We're not saying let your emotions drive all your decisions. No, just accept them. There's information there, and then we can make our decisions and we can steer the ship versus our fears steering the ship. That's the goal.
Is that what we are so afraid of, making mistakes, Trevor? Like it's about those feelings that we have when we make those mistakes, and especially making mistakes in front of others.
Yeah.
That's the difficult thing in life, not just in the sport. So is that why?
This is part of it. It's part of it. Now, sometimes it's external things are creating our fear, but oftentimes it's our internal narrative. It's both for sure, but it's this, we're conditioned to think that it's bad to feel bad, or it's not good to feel fear. And then if this happens to me all the time. I'm presented an opportunity to grow, a challenge or change, and then I feel fear. Because with my old school narrative, it's like, well, fear is bad, so I shouldn't do this. If we can just learn that fear is human, it's human to feel uncomfortable. Now I'm presented with the same challenge, with the same opportunity, and I feel the same, but now I know, of course, I feel this. I'm a human, and anytime a human gets out of their comfort zone, it feels weird. So what I'm doing is I'm not getting rid of the feeling. I'm giving the feeling less power because I know how it works. It's called a comfort zone for a reason. So anytime I expand out of it in big and small ways, it could be as small as asking a question or having a tough conversation, that is going to create some discomfort. What we're learning to do is accept that discomfort and do the thing anyways, versus giving that fear all of the power and assuming that because I feel, I'm failing, which is not the case.
Let's go back and touch base on neuroplasticity before we head into framing, and give me a crash course of why do I need to understand what neuroplasticity means if I am a coach at any level. Or I'm just a learner. I'm just curious about more than the sport. I'm just curious about getting better as a learner.
Love it. Okay. And I like the structure of this conversation. We're creating pillars of learning. We just talked about feeling. We're going to go to framing, but step one is belief. Belief, feel, frame. We're doing great, but let's nail the belief. All right. So if we are trying to build the belief, you could start with, we want to build a growth mindset. That's the belief we could grow. Neuroplasticity is the layer underneath that. So probably one of the coolest interviews I did was 3 years ago. It's with a neuroscientist. His name is Michael Merzenich. He's known as the father of neuroplasticity. So this is one of the OG neuroplasticity researchers dating back to the 70s.
Wow.
And during that interview, I'll be honest, most of it was over my head, but there is certain clips that just blew my mind. And one was He said, absolutely everyone can get better at virtually any skill. Not saying you're going to master every skill or be an expert at every skill, but if it's a skill, you can get better at it much better than you know. So, okay, that's what the research is saying. Let's get into it. Our brain is a series of circuits and pathways. Anytime we do something, we fire a pathway. And the idea is if a pathway is fired enough times in the right way, our brain will sort of reinforce that circuit. So the neuroscientists say what fires together wires together. So sometimes we think of skills as muscle memory. That's not it. Skills are circuits. Skills are circuits in our brain.
Please say that again.
A good way to think about it. So, and I was at a big PGA golf conference, and Robert Bjork was on a panel, and someone asked the same question, and he had a great way to think about it. He's like, skills aren't muscle memory. Skills live in your brain. They're circuits. It's like everyone listening has a signature, right? And we know how our signature works. And we've probably done our signature 20,000 times, lots and lots of times. We can do it in our sleep.
Yep.
Okay. If I handed you a whiteboard marker and you went to a huge whiteboard and I said, write your signature, it would look the same. You're using different muscles. You're like, these muscles to write the signature are way different than these ones. The signature looks the same. These muscles have never done it like this before. Why? Because it's a circuit in my brain. It's not my finger muscles remember my signature. It's like it's a circuit, and I can copy that circuit in a bigger way.
And so no such thing as muscle memory.
It's like maybe our muscles like can get stronger in certain ways that could help a skill, but the skill lives here. And like, so if I'm doing a skill a lot, I could build a muscle that could help the skill, but the skill itself is a circuit. So, okay, that's important to know. But then I think where we get the most bang for our buck, the most value for the listeners would be, okay, well, what is it that builds the circuit? And I think there's 4 things that to be aware of that can support the fact that a circuit could change. So layer 1 would be a circuit is changed when you fire it a lot. Okay, so that's important. It's like, and we know this, but it's good to put it on the table. To get good at something, you have to practice it. Every skill is a different circuit. So if I want to get better at public speaking, I need to fire those pathways. If I want to get better at setting a volleyball, I need to fire those pathways. So to get good at the thing, you got to do it. You got to do it a lot. So our brain is like a muscle is what we're trying to establish here. Our brain is like a muscle, which means I need to activate it and fire that pathway a lot to build that muscle or build that skill. Okay.
And because of the same thing, then skills are specific to that task.
Yes.
Because we're firing that specific path.
Exactly. So it's so important to realize that it's like so specific to the context of the situation. So, okay, I need to do it a lot. But this is where it gets annoying. A lot of people in the learning world stop there. They're like, yep, to get good at something, do it a lot. There's more to the equation. We have more layers to get into. Okay, so let's do... Okay, so there's a neuroscientist in London, and she does this famous study that shows when you're a London cab driver and you're on the job for a long time, it grows your hippocampus. This part of your brain's associated with memory. It actually grows and expands for London cab drivers. Awesome. That's proof of neuroplasticity. So then she does another study, and she compares the brains of cab drivers in London to bus drivers in London. And she selected people to be in a study that spent the same amount of time driving. So the same amount of hours per day, the same amount of years. So you could argue they're getting the same amount of practice and reps. They're driving the same streets a lot of times for a lot of years. Great. The hippocampus of the cab drivers continues to grow and expand. They see that change in the brain. There was really no change in the brains of the bus drivers. Lots of action, but something was missing. The thing that's missing is the struggle. So when I'm a bus driver,
I have stops.
I'm on stops. I'm on a path. There's really no uncertainty or struggle or change.
Oh boy,
it's really easy.
Random.
Yeah, I can kind of my brain can go into autopilot. It's highly repetitive reps.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the cab drivers are different. They don't use GPS. Every ride is different. They're adjusting by the weather, the time of day. So it's like lots of reps, but those reps, I can't go into autopilot because they involve unpredictability, uncertainty, and struggle. And because of that, we see a change. So sometimes people like me, we oversimplify learning and are like, yep, to get good, you got to do it a lot. That is true, but we also have to show it's about the quality of practice as well. The reps that we take, the action we take, have to challenge us and keep us out of autopilot. They need to involve some struggle. Now, it's entirely possible to struggle too much, but what we're saying is we need to struggle a little bit more than you think to really see a change. So step 1, we got to do it. Step 2, we need struggles. Layer 3, patience. When we're trying to change our body, we know that that doesn't happen overnight, but we have to use the same approach to learning. So many times we try to learn something and we try it like twice. I try this serve twice and I serve it into the net and then I go, yeah, I can't do this. That would be like,
so many times. Yes.
Yeah, that would be like I go to the weight room, I do one set of curls, and then I wake up in the morning like, oh, I'm not bigger. I can't grow. It's like no one would do that because we know it takes patience and reps and struggle to build a muscle.
But that's so common. That's so common when I feel like as a learner, like, no, I can't do this. And I just keep up on that skill.
We give up way too early. But so if we just remember, think of it as a muscle. It takes patience and reps and struggle to fire that pathway enough, and then we see the change. So we just have to stay patient. Of course, we want it to happen overnight, but that's not how it works. And then I would say the last layer. So we say you got to do it a lot. It needs to involve struggle. We have to stay patient. The last layer, and this is what Merzenich was telling us. It's like, look, everyone on this call, probably most of us will not become bodybuilders. Not happening over here, probably. So, but everyone on this call can make any muscle stronger if they worked it out, without a doubt. Much stronger than we realize. And the same rules apply to building a skill. We can all get better at any skill if we practice enough in the right way. I'm not saying you're going to be the best, but I'm saying you can get better than you think. And that is not fluff. That is research that's been established since the 70s. And I think that is the building block of becoming a better learner. That's the essence of a growth mindset, but it's no longer just have a growth mindset, because that's just, I believe I could grow. Neuroplasticity is saying you can grow. So it's like, it's even more like sustainable and I think more strengthened in the science. And so
since that is so important, like, how do you define an effective repetition? See, if I want to get better at something and I want to make sure that I'm doing effective reps about anything that I'm doing, how can I define it? How do I know if I'm doing it, if I'm going to the right path?
Yep. Good question. Couple tools. There's no blueprint, but a few tools. One is we want it to involve struggle, but we don't want it to be too much struggle or not enough struggle. Okay. So think of like working out. Like you're probably way stronger than me. So you need a different amount of weight to bench press than I do. But there's that zone that would be better for me or better for you. Now, you could add too much or too little, but to get the most out of the workout. And sometimes it's trial and error to find that zone. The other thing we could do when it comes to learning is use our feelings. If it feels too easy or if it feels overwhelming, it's probably too far. I'm looking for the sweet spot of this is kind of uncomfortable. So we could use our feelings to calibrate that window. So we want...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, one more piece. So we want the right amount of hard. But then, and this is the part where I see some people messing up, we want the right type of hard. There are a lot of ways to make a drill more difficult or make a practice more difficult that will make it harder, but I don't think it will be that effective. And so the strategy is, and I come from the basketball world, so I can make fun of them. It's like, if you look up basketball training on YouTube or Instagram, there's a lot of crazy things happening. Like that are technically hard. Like it's hard to stand on a ball with one foot when you're blindfolded, juggling a ball and like dribbling a ball and doing that's hard. But it's kind of, I think about it as it's fake hard. So the way to sidestep fake hard would be, if I want to make a practice or training session more difficult, use the variables that I will see in the game. So like if I'm trying to become a better public speaker, there's a lot of variables that are going to be present when I give my talk in front of others. It's those variables that I should try to introduce into my practice. That would be the right type of hard. Now, I shouldn't make it fake hard where I have to do it with music playing in the background and blindfolded and with like, no, use the variables that you're going to see. Now, the other side of the spectrum would be none of those variables. That's kind of how we normally practice. I'm preparing for a talk in front of people, but then I only practice in front of the mirror. That's too easy. Not enough hard. Like I need some variables. And the variables you could ask any human on earth. And this is the exciting part. Like learning research isn't that complicated. I could go ask my grandma, hey, want to get better for a talk in front of people? Should I only practice in front of the mirror? She'd say no. I'd say, well, what should I do? Well, probably practice in front of people. Boom, like we did it. And that's the learning research in a nutshell. It's like, yeah, no kidding. And but the thing is, sometimes we don't accept that logic when it comes to the way we practice. Like it's very simple.
Quick question about that, because you can see, and speaking of basketball, you can see very famous players doing like pre-game routines that have to do more about feeling. The way they feel about going into a game.
Yeah.
So even if they don't have any transferring to learning, they feel better after they do this routine. So can you speak about that relationship then? If feelings are so important into learning, then is that a little bit conflicted to our brain, or like?
Yeah, this is messy. So there's let's break it down. Layer one. I don't care what you do in the warm up. So like, let's just start there. Like, because I believe in like making changes where we're going to see the most benefit. Right. So how you warm up for 10 minutes before a game, I don't care. There's probably a lot of better ways to do layup lines in basketball. I don't care. What I want to change is how you spend 90 minutes a day during practice 4 days a week. Like, let's get better at that. So I'm never really going to come after the pregame routines. Now, that being said, I'm going to come after him a little bit. Like, I was interviewing the Bjorks. And so Robert and Elizabeth Bjork, they're from UCLA. Their research is around what they call desirable difficulties, which is what are the right type of difficulties to build into learning that make it better. Their research focuses more in the education world, but we can use a lot of their principles in sports. And Dr. Bjork was telling me about a study where they wanted to test some different practice organization strategies. And the task was to like figure out which artist made this painting. And so one group was trained with what they would call kind of a more blocked style. So there's like, say 5 artists, and I'm going to show you 20 from this artist, 20 from this artist, 20 from this artist. And that's how you're trained. And then the other group is the more varied approach where I'm going to show you a bunch of different ones from all the different artists, but they're mixed in. So we have a very structured block style, 20, 20, 20, and then the varied. And again, the goal is how they're tested the next day would be, we're showing you one painting, tell us who did it. Now, the cool thing they did in this particular study is after the training session, they surveyed the group of like, how confident are you that you're going to be able to perform this task? The confidence scores of the block group were way higher than the varied group, way higher. So they technically felt better. But during the test the next day, the varied group did significantly better than the other group. So this is showing that, and the best way that I know to talk about this, CC Clark, we mentioned her earlier, and I learn a ton from her. Anytime I could talk to her, I do, because she's brilliant. She talks about She calls it junk food confidence. So sometimes we're so worried about feeling good and feeling confident that we just do these junk food things that really have no value just so we feel good about it.
Mm.
When maybe if we changed where our confidence is coming from, that'd be better. So rather, and this is kind of in the baseball world, it's like junk food confidence is for batting practice, you're throwing me like 50-mile-an-hour meatballs right down the middle. And I go out in batting practice and I'm hitting home run after home run after home run. I probably feel pretty good, and the people watching make me feel even better. Okay, let's go back to my grandma. Grandma, do you think that that's the best way to prepare for the game? Probably not. Why? Well, in the game, they stand farther back and they're throwing 90 miles an hour and they're not telling me what pitch. Now, okay, that is going back to what if I could change the source of my confidence? What if in batting practice, after getting warmed up and hitting some of the meatballs, I said, move back, don't tell me what you're throwing, treat it as a live at bat. Those reps are going to be better. I might not hit as many home runs, but that's queuing up my eyes and brain to get better at the skill. I'm introducing those game variables. Now, maybe I won't hit as many home runs and maybe my ego won't feel as good, but technically I'm more prepared because I just did the skill that I need to do when the lights are on and then when it matters. And if I teach that player about the learning research, you could argue then their confidence is coming from not I just cranked 10 homers during batting practice. What if my confidence is I cranked no homers during batting practice, but I saw live pitches and now I'm prepared. So what if we go back to public speaking? What if my confidence isn't I gave my talk 20 times in a row perfectly in front of a mirror, I'm confident, versus I'm confident because I did it in front of a bunch of strangers a bunch of times and it made me feel uncomfortable, but now I feel better prepared for the thing I have to do. That's a different type of confidence versus that instant gratification, easy confidence. The junk food confidence is a good way to think about it.
So he's making sure that the way I feel comes from the right sources, and not defining myself through the easy path, and making sure that path is still achievable, something that I can succeed on, but at the same time, something that is more real to the practice that I'm going to execute.
And then another thing, and I have to call myself on this a lot, and I think everyone listening can be here. It's like, look, all of us, we perform in different ways. We're coaches, we're leaders, we're parents. We do a lot of things. We have all performed well when we felt good, but we've all performed well when we didn't. And that we should remember that because we're not always going to feel perfect. Like I think about these with my workshops.
That's mind-blowing, Trevor, by the way. It's so simple, but so mind-blowing because it's just so true, man.
Yeah. And so like
back now. Go ahead.
When I was younger and I was doing these workshops, this was what I would do because I was so nervous. I was like, I had these crazy routines and I had to listen to these 3 hip hop songs by these 3 artists and drink a certain color Gatorade and have 2 pieces. And I'm creating all these things because I feel like I have to be like really feeling perfect to execute this thing. But if you do this job long enough, sometimes your flight's canceled. Sometimes that you get like a flat tire, like things happen to where you can't do the routine. But the most important thing ever is because of the problems that happen, there was a couple workshops I did on no sleep, or I forgot my headphones, or I didn't have gum, and they still went well. It's like, oh, like maybe I shouldn't put as much weight into my feelings as it's like, look, we don't always have to feel perfect. And I think the athletes listening, the coaches listening, we could all agree that we've done it. We've performed really well, feeling good, really well, feeling bad. We performed pretty crappy, feeling good and bad. It's like, it's not a one-to-one relationship. And so once we can accept that, it's like the goal maybe isn't necessarily to feel perfect. No, I'm not saying that just to throw out your routines. All these are good, and it's good to feel prepared, but we don't always have to feel perfect to perform really well. We don't.
Yeah, you have to feel good because of the effective repetitions that you have taken before, even to that.
Okay. I'm feeling good that I've done the work to prepare for the moment. It
Okay.
doesn't have to be like, I am not nervous. That shouldn't be the goal because that's not going to happen. So
So
it's just,
it's more important the way we feel about our feelings, like you mentioned, instead of just the feelings itself. Because just like athletes and coaches, we might not be feeling great on specific matches, but we still
yeah,
have to perform. And the best teams are the ones that even when they're not coming in their best day,
yes.
they're still able to succeed.
And so, one big theme of our conversation right now is we just have to accept that we're going to feel all sorts of different ways. And there's not like, there's no good and bad. We're humans.
Mm.
It's like, you can't tell me, like, if you're playing in a big match, I hope you're feeling. You're going to feel all sorts of stuff. It's not necessarily a typical thing to go battle against another team in front of tens of thousands of people and do something that matters that much to you. That's going to activate a lot of feelings. But if we're ashamed to feel, like, that's going to cause more problems. So you could say, like, look, our feelings don't really affect performance unless we're trying to get rid of them, unless we're having feelings about our feelings. If we can just learn to just feel and accept, now we're back in control. The emotions aren't driving. Because the problem is when we're trying to fight them, then the emotions are driving our actions. Because all of our actions are, they're all trying to achieve this impossible goal of to stop feeling or to feel perfect. And that's not going to happen.
So they're driving basically our performance.
Yeah, which affects the performance. You go back to the students scored a 53% on that song because their focus is on the feeling. The second group, their focus is on singing and they feel the same. So that's in accepting. I'm not saying we brood on these emotions and just sit in them. I'm saying accept and go play. That's it.
Last thing before we go into framing, but we're talking about this, and what happens when my feelings get on the way of that performance? Like, if I don't feel well because I'm not performing well, Trevor. Like, then what matters now?
I think it's just, again, acceptance. It's like, I just served 3 in a row into the net. Yeah, that's going to feel bad. And of course I feel bad. I care and it didn't go well. And so then once I can accept that, my goal is not to stop feeling bad. My goal is, well, why did I serve it in the net? What is fixable? So in accepting, that is when I'm in better control of the feeling versus I served 3 in the net and I feel bad. Oh, feeling bad makes me play bad. Oh no, how do I get rid of this? And then I'm like fighting this again. Acceptance, it seems difficult, but as soon as we accept, we can again just like refocus on the task itself. It's easy to say, but it's hard to do. It's just to realize, like, you're not going to get rid of it by fighting it. Mm-hmm. You can learn to regulate it a bit by accepting it.
And and this goes back to how we started this conversation about what Coach Kirao is creating in his gym, about everyone is on the same page about learning, about being vulnerable in this process, and about making sure that they know that they're not always going to feel great. But if everyone is doing the same things, then we can serve as basic reminders to each other about what paths do we need to be taking, no matter how we feel about the performance. Now, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, and that touches on modeling. That's another thing we can model with our people. And I've seen Karch do that. I've seen him at timeouts own his feelings and say, like, I'm feeling it right now, and I know you are too. And as soon as someone says that, that's modeling.
I love that.
And everyone, they don't stop feeling, but they just kind of chill. Like, because if it's like it's
in the world, at some point feels this way.
And maybe it's just changing what we're trying to accomplish. If your goal in that huddle is to stop feeling, good luck. You're at the Olympics. Like, there's a lot riding on this, and there's about 1 million people watching. And if your goal is to feel nothing, best of luck to you. I don't think you're going to do it. Versus his approach with, I'm feeling it, and I know you are too, and I hope you do. We earned this feeling. We feel because we care. We feel because we're battling. We feel because there's uncertainty. So he wasn't hiding it, but as soon as you own it, it's just like, oh, he's right. Let's go play.
Yeah, and instead of going in the huddle, hey, calm down,
Yeah.
player, everything's gonna be good. It's just more about owning how we feel and then being okay with
Yes.
it in order to move on.
Uh-huh.
Now, let's get into framing. Let's dive into it. What do
Yeah.
you know about it? And I have been blown away by some of our guests talking about the importance of this element, about the framing, especially when we talk about feedback. How are we framing the conversation towards our student athletes, our national team players, our players in general, when we talk positive or negatively about their actions and how they can and should continue to get better. So
All right.
why is this so important in sports, and then why is this so important in learning in general?
Okay. I like it. I'm a big summary guy. I think it's always good to call back to what is our mission right now.
Mhm.
We said to become a better learner, you have to take and sustain action that expands you out of your comfort zone. Boom. Now, how do you encourage more of that? 3 tools that we're building. Belief, that's growth mindset, neuroplasticity. Feeling, accepting the fact that it's okay to feel and learning not to fight those things, to accept them. And now the third skill, and of course there's more, but I like these 3. Framing. I think the best way to think about it would be the way you frame a situation can impact what you get from the situation itself.
Mm,
Okay. So there are a lot of ways you could frame something, but let's use maybe 3 big ones that everyone can relate to. We could frame something as meaningless or useless, like kind of just like this doesn't matter. We could frame it as a threat, or we could frame it as an opportunity.
mm,
Now, it all gets messy and sometimes there's overlap, but those are 3 kind of distinct things: meaningless, threat, opportunity. Now, maybe some people are on this call right now framing. Well, I know everyone's framing, but let's just think about it. So this call
you
we've
have those
gone.
three choices of about what
Yeah,
route to get in order
yeah,
to be able to get better or not.
right. And so maybe if someone was to frame this conversation as a threat, would be like, who's this guy sitting in his living room? He doesn't even play volleyball and he's telling me what to do. That's kind of perceiving it as a threat, like I'm being threatened, or he's telling me everything I do is wrong.
Mm,
Okay, that would be threat mode. uh Meaningless or pointless mode would be, I already know all this stuff, I don't need to get better, this doesn't matter. Okay, that would be meaningless or pointless.
that's so common.
Yeah, of course, of course. And then and then the third would be opportunity. Maybe this guy, maybe these guys in this conversation, maybe they'll share a few things that could help me get better.
Mm,
Okay, now let's think about this. No matter how you frame this, you're not changing the situation. Either way, we're going to be talking your ear off. We're going to be talking for probably 90 minutes. I don't care how you frame it, but in how you frame it, you're changing what you get from it. That the person who frames it as an opportunity is going to experience this in a different way than the person that says, I don't need this, and a different way than the person that perceives this as an attack. Now, you use that example and you use those 3 buckets. That's playing out in every single situation we face as athletes and just people. Like every talk, every class, every drill, every game, every practice. Is this a threat? Is this an opportunity? Is this meaningless? And so what you find with this research is it's actually empowering, that I don't really control the situation I'm in, but what I can control is what I get, and I do that by looking for the opportunity. Now, there's a couple stories I'd like to tell that can drive home like this power. So the best example of framing that I know is my friend. His name is Larry Wilkins, and I was doing a workshop in a prison in like 5 years ago, and I met him at the workshop, and we became friends, and we stayed in touch through email. And then when I was living in Los Angeles, I did a retreat where I convinced 8 people to come to my apartment and go through this stuff together. Karch was there. Courtney Thompson was there. Some people from San Francisco in the tech industry were there, and Larry was there. It was like the dream scenario, which we go back. I cannot believe Karch was there. That says so much about him that I'm like, want to come hang out in my apartment and talk about learning with 7 people you don't know? It's like, and he agreed. It's like, wow.
He was just there hanging out with
just chilling, teaching. And so the lessons we learned from Larry were kind of the most powerful. So during the second day of this retreat, he started to open up, and he talked about his time in prison. And he said he was there for like 20 years, like maybe 19. And for like the first chunk of time he was there, he said, I was absolutely miserable, and I like suffered all the time. And all I could think about is how terrible the environment was and how much I hated being there. I have no idea what it would be like to be in that situation, and I never will. And I can't even so it's unfair to be like, it's understandable that he felt like that. It's like, I can't even fathom that. But then he goes, with about 4 or 5 years left in my sentence, I decided I was in college, not prison. And so he just starts devouring books. He starts teaching the stuff he's learning to other guys on the inside. He sets up the group that read Carol Dweck's book, and then they ended up reaching out to me. He's out now. We're working together. We're building him a website, and he's going to go around and teach people this stuff. He's going to create a course for other people in prisons to get out and stay out. Like, unbelievable things this guy is doing.
Wow.
And I would argue it's a byproduct of him reframing his situation. Now, in framing his situation as, I'm in college, this is an opportunity to grow, that didn't change his environment. He was still in a really tough environment, and it didn't make every day easy and fun, but it did certainly change what he got. Now, I'm not acting like I could have done that. I don't think I could have. This is like amazing that he did that, but it's that tool that we're talking about. In framing something as an opportunity, we're not diminishing the difficulty or ignoring the problems. It's accepting those, just like we accept our tough emotions. Same rules apply. I'm accepting this is scary. I'm accepting this is hard. I'm accepting this is unfair. And I'm looking for this opportunity that could help me grow. That is what Larry was doing. Now, here's the really, really cool thing. Well, that was really cool, but it gets better.
It was.
So Courtney Thompson, during this retreat, and she was the former setter for the U.S. Olympic volleyball team, she was sitting on my couch, and she was talking about some of her experiences and sharing some stories. And it was great. It was like the perfect Courtney moment. She stops, and Larry's sitting next to her, and she just goes, Larry, do you think we're a bunch of jerks? Because like, we're talking about volleyball and losing a match or serving it into the net, and you're talking about like being in prison. And his response was
struggles. Yes.
Yeah. And his response was awesome. He goes, you're not jerks, because the truth is this: people are people, feelings are feeling, fear is fear. And that the tools that you use to deal with a losing streak are the same tools I'm gonna have to use when I face challenges. They might be more difficult for me to use, but they're the same tools. He goes, I got to maintain a growth mindset. I have to be willing to accept fear and feel these tough emotions and feel sad. And I have to look for opportunities to grow. It's like, those are the 3 tools we've been talking about for over an hour, but those are the same ones. But then he goes, the one thing that I hope people do, and I was guilty of this before I met Larry, he's taught me a lot. We have to change our language around some of this stuff. That sometimes people like me would travel around and say, you got to love the mistakes, love the challenges, love the failure. It's like, love is a great word, but not for stuff like that. Like, you can't go give a workshop inside of a prison and say, love these opportunities. No, you cannot say that. That is not okay. So Larry says, the word isn't love, the word is appreciate. We can appreciate that in a challenge, there's an opportunity. We can appreciate that in almost any situation, there's something that could help me grow. It could be big, it could be small, but I can appreciate it. I don't have to love losing. I don't have to love serving it into the net. I don't have to love losing my job. Don't have to love it. I can, in fact, hate it and feel all my feelings about it. That's why feeling is important. And at the same time, I can appreciate that in this moment, there's an opportunity to grow. So go back to my Duke story. If I had the tools that I had now, I think I could have handled that much better. It would have been, Trevor, of course you're angry. You spent 15 years to try to get here, or what, 12, 10 years, whatever. Of course you're angry, and you should be angry. And at the same time, you have a behind the scenes look at the best basketball program maybe ever, one of the best leaders maybe ever, and you get to go to every game and every practice, and the coaching staff, the players, the environment. It's just a gold mine of learning.
Well said, and I agree with that. And you know, and I must say, I think that it has to do with the way of always us thinking what we do not have, what we could have done. You know, the
Yeah.
if, you know, the all those things that are not in the present moment that we have total control of. And appreciation of those things, like your friend said, you know, it's like valuing what we actually have, not thinking so much what we don't have right now, but how are we maximizing the resources
Yeah.
that we have around us, but also within us to make
Yep.
it better.
Yep. And I keep coming back. It's like, to me, when it's, and I need to go back and watch this too. I want to make it clear. I am not perfect with this. I fail at this, but I do know that this is what I want to do more of. It's belief, feel, frame. I'm not stuck. I'm willing to feel what could help me grow. It's like, those are the things I'm trying to do in the big and the small, whether it's playing volleyball or life stuff. And again, we're never going to be perfect with that. And of course we shouldn't be. We're going to stumble with that a lot, but those are the tools we keep coming back to over and over and over. And I think once you lay those tools out properly, you can have some powerful conversations with people. Like, in our workshops, we've been asking people, like, name a challenge, and in that challenge, you can find something that'll help us grow, whether it's like, and I don't even really want to talk about like the pandemic and coronavirus stuff, because like we said at the start, we're not experts, we don't know. But it's like, in this, we could all talk about all sorts of things we've been forced to confront and learn, all of us, whether it's just how to be still, or how to be around family, or how to be patient. It's like, there are opportunities, and this is a terrible, scary thing, and like, I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. Like, I wouldn't, like, we're not saying you have to go to prison to learn these things. We're saying we can, like Larry, we can learn from people that have experienced really, really tough challenges, but we can create this framework that might help us sometimes when we face challenges. I believe I could grow, I'm willing to feel, and I'm looking for the opportunity.
We're talking to Trevor Ragan, the creator of the Learner Lab, which probably most people know as Training Ugly. I highly invite everyone inside and outside of the US to visit his YouTube channel. So many, you know, you can even say motivational videos about how to get better. You know, how so many tools about, you know, the science of learning, so many tools about examples of learning, and using different sports on the way to it. So
Mhm.
and different companies as well, because this goes outside of sport. Learning is it's probably the main task that we have as human beings. So I highly encourage everyone, number one, to like his page, and then number two, to go to his YouTube channel. The last thing that I want to ask you, Trevor, is that you mentioned in one of your workshops that performance cannot drive leadership. And I feel that as coaches, as athletes, as employees, as bosses, we struggle with that element a lot. Where if we do not do our job well, how can we tell others to do it well? You know, that's the main thought that goes through our mind.
Yeah.
You know, how if I'm not playing well, how can I actually tell my teammate, you know, to get her act, you know,
Yeah.
to make it better? So can you explain a little bit what that concept means, and how do we get better at that?
Yeah, it's tough because it's like, if we go back to the anti-talent show and the modeling stuff, it shows that oftentimes the most powerful modeling is the vulnerability or the owning of our mistakes. It's not, look at me, I'm perfect. And so like we have to remember that, like, if we really want to move a learning culture, it's like oftentimes it's owning our missteps. Like that's so, and look, I know it's easy to sit on Facebook Live and talk about this, and it's hard to do, but that's like the powerful stuff of leadership. It's like, and I think the catch-22 or the paradox is, let's just be honest. We're competing, we're trying to win. There's a scoreboard, we're trying to win. And I think there's kind of a movement sometimes in sports where we're like trying to beat that out of people. That's not going to go anywhere. That's kind of like the emotion stuff. Like, you're not going to get rid of that. We're humans. Like, we have an ego. You're not going to get rid of your ego. You can learn to harness it and use it and regulate it, but you're not going to get rid of it. Just like if there's a scoreboard, we're going to care. And I think you could argue we want that. That shouldn't be our only fuel source, because if it's our only thing, that's not good fuel. But if it's one of our things that are fueling us, that's good. It's sustainable. In fact, some of the best learners I know, they're hungry to grow because we're chasing something. I want to win this or get this position or get this playing time. Good. Just don't let that be the only fuel source. And so let's just take it from the top. First, it's performance and growth are not enemies. They just aren't, but we make them out to be. It's like so annoying that I can care about an outcome and performance and be a great learner at the same time. I can hold these both in my hands at the same time. Yet sometimes people like me, we make them out to be enemies. It's either it's all about the outcome or all about the process. It's like, no, it's both. Because guess what? My good process can improve my outcomes, and the outcomes can give me feedback and measure my process. Like, all this is integrated. It's all working together. I can't just ignore the outcome or act like I don't care.
To go, and think of the moment with the end in mind, with that, famous phrase about keep the end in mind. But then, I'm keeping my end in mind, but then I need to keep my mind on the process, but then I need to focus also on the outcome. So
it's like, just all we're saying is you're a human, so you're not going to just be only this or only that. It's going to be messy, but we can stop shaming ourselves for caring about the outcome, because that's not going away. But what I'm saying is, once we just realize, like, look, especially in sports, the sacrifice we're trying to make is not, do you want to perform well or get better? It's not it. The sacrifice is our comfort during training. That's the sacrifice I'm trying to get people to make. Is there's a lot of ways we could practice that would make us feel good, that would be easy. There's a lot of drills that would make us feel good and be easy. And there's drills that would make us feel a little bit weird. Those drills would be better. And that's the sacrifice. Am I willing to feel kind of weird during training? And if I'm doing that more often, I win more games. So it's like, again, the sacrifice isn't performance and growth. It's comfort during training. So let's go back to the public speaking skill. Same rules apply. I could, during my prep, only talk in front of the mirror. And that would technically be the easiest thing where I don't have to feel uncomfortable. Or I could find people to give it in front of, even if it's friends or family. That will without a doubt be more uncomfortable than the mirror.
Yeah, and I'm making it more real as well.
Yes, yeah.
Ability,
and I can get feedback, and I'm feel it, it's just endless amount of value. So again, that's the sacrifice. During this training, do I want to feel perfectly comfortable or not so comfortable? And if I choose not so comfortable, and if I do that a few times, I give a better talk. So once again, it wasn't the process and outcomes being enemies. They were helping. A better training, better practice, and willing to be uncomfortable will help me give a better talk. Performance and learning are not enemies.
we're talking to Trevor Ragan, and I want to ask him this last question, and is what is the next step for you now as a learner? What are you trying to get better at, Trevor? Like throughout this time where we're basically stuck in the unknown.
For me personally, it's I interviewed Matthew Dix. He's one of the world's best storytellers for one of our podcast episodes, and I think the science of how powerful stories are and how we teach is amazing. And so I'm trying to learn from him to become a better storyteller. And I have a long ways to go, long ways to go. But that's a skill that I think if I can get a little bit better, I'm not going to master it, but a little bit better, that will make me better at my job. So personally, that's what I'm trying to do. And then for the Learner Lab as a whole, for my website, I think we're getting really good with the mental side of learning. And of course, we're going to continue to get better, but I love where it's at. And I've never been able to say that before. Right now, I love where it's at, the topics we talk about, how we talk about them. And then the next phase moving forward with the Learner Lab, it's all right. Now that I'm winning battles between my ears from the individual standpoint, what are ways to build a better learning environment for the group? And so that's the stuff that I'm going to explore now. And I think both matter, the individual and the group, but now we're going to phase into that type of stuff.
What's the website name for the people that are wanting to get better at learning? And then do you have any contact information that maybe after our conversation, you can go into the comment section and put it as well? But if you can say it.
I'll put it in there. If you just go to thelearnerlab.com, everything is there. It's all free. The podcast, the videos, the articles, that's the place to go. And my phone number and email are there as well. And so I have not much going on right now, so feel free to shoot me an email if anyone has questions. We can do the questions in the chat. You could email me. Like, I'm here to help. I'm really passionate about this stuff. So
give examples of groups that you have worked on, you are worked with that people can relate with, that companies and also teams.
I've been doing a lot of work with PepsiCo South America. Like over the last year, I've been doing a ton of work with them. They're awesome because they're mostly people in leadership roles from all sorts of countries. I've done a lot of work with the Cleveland Indians, the Major League Baseball team. I did a big workshop with Tom Black and Team Canada Volleyball. And then also just hundreds of schools. So when I go into a school, it'll be like a day with the teachers, and then I'll work with students from kindergarten to high school, like, and everything in between. And so it's just, my thing is I teach the same thing every time, because these principles, what we touched on today, believe, feel, frame, that's universal stuff, man. Like everyone uses those tools, and we could all use them a little bit more.
So good, Trevor. And like always, I appreciate this opportunity. Learned so much today. I'm so excited to try to apply what you have talked about. I want to go back and actually watch this video.
Me too.
Take it back, but I think it's going to be a great learning tool for everyone, around the US and around the world as well. I wish you well as always, Trevor. You have something great going on. Thank you so much for caring about creating ultimate learners along the way, no matter the age. So I hope that serves as an example for us coaches, for everyone involved in the game that we love. People, please stay safe and healthy throughout these hard times. And remember always, especially through these hard times, there to make a difference by starting with that change from within. Okay, so we can become better learners. That is exactly what is in our control. So let's focus on that. I'll see everyone tomorrow at 1 p.m. Once again, thank you so much, Trevor, for being here. Any last words, Trevor?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. This is one of the coolest things going on right now. Like, I love tuning into these. You're getting awesome guests. Just keep up the good work. This is helping a lot of people. So good on you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And everyone, go and listen to Trevor Ragan's podcast. All right. See you tomorrow.